An interesting backstory.
I think it's important that everybody knows about the Wizard of Oz.
A professional with decades of experience in her field.
I'm a psychotherapist who works pretty much exclusively with law enforcement officers, as well as other first responders.
Strong opinions and a definite point of view.
What people see on the streets, this job, is not normal.
Brutally honest and funny.
When I get a call in the middle of the night and they've been drinking beer, they're normally crying over a relationship. When they're drinking Jack, they get on the phone and they start off with, "Hey babe."
She identifies problems, probes, pokes, and makes you think.
So if something happens to your family, which is truly your biggest fear, and you haven't thought about every single potential of what could go wrong, then you feel like you failed.
She has her own special style.
You're either part of the problem or part of the solution. Pick a side.
Welcome to StephTherapy911 with Stephanie Samuels.
Hello and welcome to StephTherapy911 with Stephanie Samuels. Today I am honored to have Joe Ramirez on my program. Joe is the founder of Apex Mobile, and what makes Apex Mobile so amazing is what he did with it. It is the pay forward to Lighthouse Wellness, which is a program for first responders, and Joe's going to spend time getting into that. Joe and I met actually by phone. This is the first time he and I have actually seen each other. Some time ago, Joe had contacted me to tell me what he was doing and had asked if CopLine could be part of that and go on his each one of the apps for law enforcement. And we were just so honored to be able to do that. But going beyond that, it's kind of like, what drives somebody to want to help first responders that's not a first responder, to do something that one could get paid really well to do? And yet for you, that's not what this is about. So I kind of, so welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm looking at you and you're young, so also really nice. So tell me a little bit about you. Tell me about where you grew up. I know that you're in California right now.
Yep.
So if you don't mind, kind of, where'd you grow up and how'd you get where you are?
Yeah. So grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco, Silicon Valley. Was there until I came down to college down in Southern California, Chapman University, and I've come down here in '95. So I've been out of the Bay Area for quite a while, but my family's still up there. And graduated from Chapman, lived in Chicago for a while, lived in Austin, Texas for a while. I worked for a nonprofit for a year, a nonprofit that was based out of Evanston. So went out there and I traveled with them for a year, and then I actually worked in our main office for a year. Moved back to California for a bit, and then ended up working at a company where we developed randomly a lot of technology that we ended up selling our company to a company called Internet Brands, where I became the founding general manager of their health vertical. Nothing to do necessarily with where I got today, just an interesting overlap. But a lot of the technology that we developed when we sold to this company, Internet Brands, now the system and the piece that we put in place are kind of the foundation behind a little website called WebMD, and how they match their doctors with patients with different health and welfare providers. And we ran quite a bit of, I think in that group, we acquired about 20 different. I was well before that. I wish I was still there with WebMD. I'd probably still be working there. I missed the giant buyout, but I think it worked out okay. But just interesting that my background ended up being health and wellness technology on the internet, and back to where I am today. But ended up in Austin, Texas. And after we sold, I left California to save those great tax benefits and moved to Texas, and decided to start my own company. And then because I had family and friends back here in California, moved back to California about, I guess, 5, 6, 7 years ago now. And have been out of California since. And in that time moving to California is when we started Apex Mobile, which is, I left that previous job just because I thought apps were interesting, and the future was apps. I didn't know exactly where they're going to go, but looking at these little squares that we all had in our hands now, going, everybody's going to want to put stuff on these little mobile devices. And they're really a pain to build. It's really hard to make these things. So what if we built software that made it easy to make apps? So what I thought would take me 6 months to a year to do took me about 5-6 years to do. So we finally developed all that fun, and somehow in that I stumbled into developing mobile applications for public safety. So we've been doing that for about 5-6 years, as I mentioned now, and it's been community engagement. So apps that a police department or a fire department or state Department of Fire, Forestry Management will distribute for free to their communities and allow them to send notifications out to the community and source information back in, give tips or, report potholes, whatever the case may be. And then about 3-4 years ago, we got into building custom internal communication apps for agencies. So apps that allow, just folks do their jobs on a day-to-day basis. And Huntington Beach PD was the first agency that came on board with that. And, they use it to do their day-to-day jobs. And it's just a very customizable platform. So from all that, we work with about 120 law enforcement agencies, primarily across the United States. And through that work, we got introduced to how I got to what I'm doing today, the 100 Club of Arizona. And for those who might not be aware what the 100 clubs are, I'm sure most of your folks are, but they're typically regional. Arizona is a rare case. I know there's some more statewide ones popping up, but a statewide nonprofit that focuses on providing typically financial assistance to first responders. If someone's injured or unfortunately killed in the line of duty, they're able to step in and provide financial assistance and guidance. And got a quote from the 100 Club of Arizona to build a statewide pair of applications. They call them bulletproof and fireproof, that any agency within the state of Arizona could sign up for and use to be able to confidentially and anonymously access health and wellness resources. And Angela Harold, the CEO there, and Ivor Rohde, who's been my partner in crime, as we've been building this out over the last year and a half, won the bid to build that for them. And really my passion for being able to do this was seeing how big of an impact they had amongst those folks that they interacted with. So in building the project for them, I got the opportunity to make a few trips out to Arizona and be with them at their events where they were talking about just what they did in their programming and just the genuine impact that folks would come up to them saying, just number one, thank you for helping me, with X, Y, and Z. We were going through a really hard time. And if it wasn't for what you were able to do, as well as how excited people were for the program we were building with them. So as we built it for the state, I started kind of bouncing around going, why don't we do this for everybody in the United States? I don't get it. We just built it for the state, open your program up. Well, they were lucky enough to get funding from the Bob and Renee Parsons Foundation in Arizona to do this for the state of Arizona. And they finally said, Joe, shut up. We have funding for Arizona. We can't go nationwide, but you have our blessing to take what we've worked on together and open it up to any other agency nationwide to go do it. And that's where Lighthouse Health and Wellness was born. So
why Lighthouse?
The name, or just why did we, well, Lighthouse is just foundation, it's a beacon that can be there. So, can we put something in every agency's hand that no matter where or when they are, they're able to get to information, that supports their health and wellness. So we founded Lighthouse with a specific mission of ensuring that every public agency and safety agency in the United States has the ability to provide its employees, along with those that support them, with confidential and anonymous access to health and wellness information. So that's the whole mission of what we're trying to do. We do that through a mobile app that we can give an agency, as well as a website that any agency can get a code and go to. So they don't ever have to install anything necessarily to get to the information. They can go to any computer anywhere and punch in a specific code for their agency and be able to get to that information.
Wow. So when you first start, first of all, what did you major in college?
Business. I was actually a film major when I first started. And my first day of film class, I absolutely realized I was not like the other film majors in the class. So flipped over to business and rode that out.
So what kind of drew you to first responders?
Well, I would say it was neat. So my background was developing technology to help connect doctors with patients, but a lot of cash-based procedures, plastic surgeons, cosmetic dermatology, neat stuff. But was I really making, to me, a giant impact in the long run? great. We sold another pick your cosmetic procedure of choice that we used to do. And it was great. But once we started building apps for law enforcement, was what a better way to be able to drive that communication between a police department. And I think this is even more relevant today with all the craziness that's going on, is looking back and saying, what channel does a public safety agency have to be able to communicate directly with its citizens? Without being filtered by the media, without having to, fight through a crowded social media feed and get that attention. And I don't know, I just thought, man, if I could actually give a way that a police department could give its message out to everybody in their community, how can we not be making a safer place for all of us if we're able to drive that one-to-one communication without a filter? So I think it just more so just took the technology that I was building and said, hey, this might actually have an impact beyond, somebody's bottom line, selling a medical procedure, not that's a necessary procedure, but really driving some kind of other impact. So I think that's how I stumbled into law enforcement. And the work we do internally with agencies really turned me on to the lack of technology that most agencies have. I don't shake my head anymore with the funny stuff that they tell me. We still print out, we still chase bad guys with wanted posters, literally. You would think we're a little more evolved than that, but nope. For most agencies, it's a printed PDF or an emailed PDF that's a poster, and that's indicative of a lot of the items that are out there. And you can do some really what I think are small items that can have very outsized impact by putting a certain piece of information in somebody's hand when and where they need it, without having to get on the radio and call, hey, can you go find this? Or have to go sit down and stare at a computer. Being able to just push information out immediately when something's happening. There's just a lot of little marginal things that we can do with, I shouldn't undersell them and say marginal, but small things we can do that can have very outsized impact, I feel, on what our public safety folks do.
So working with first responders, public safety, there's a head in it and there's a heart in it. And you ended up with a heart in it. How?
It's just nice to feel you're doing something good for those who are out there doing good for you. I guess I don't know how else to really frame it, that, not that I think I wouldn't have done this before, but obviously I've got to know quite a few first responders in my past 5 years doing this.
Right.
And I think a big part for me was getting over the block that they're all normal people. I was one of the ones that was, oh my God, you're a police officer. You're, okay, they're all normal folks. And so I think that in my own head, that was a funny hurdle to get over, when I could just call up and be like, hey, chief, what up? Whoever they are, I don't need to have some crazy reverence in terms of the day-to-day interaction. Now, of course, what they're out there and doing is still pretty, I think I do have for what they're putting themselves out there to go do. But I think meeting them and then just honestly seeing the amount of money, and this is where I kind of came from. So my other background, we sold a lot of leads for, think of all the stuff you might do with health and wellness in terms of substance abuse and treatment and things like that. There's a lot of money that goes flying around in those organizations. And what if we can make sure more of it actually goes to the treatment, actually people talking to each other? And I think specifically for the health and wellness aspect of it is, there's a lot of people that scrape a lot of cream, I feel, off the top, that if it comes to the health and wellness of our first responders, I just don't think that's one place the cream shouldn't be. As many of those dollars that we can put back into getting somebody treatment or help or assistance if they've got to fly across country, whatever the case may be, but can we do something that's a tangible benefit to the folks that need the help versus just making money for somewhere? I think that's how I just kind of fell into this, going, hey, I've got this really neat technology that I can kind of almost take the cost of, I call it the last mile delivery. So if you've seen, what last mile delivery is, when you order from Amazon, it all goes to the warehouse, it then goes to a local distribution center. Well, then you've got the FedEx, the UPS, and the USPS truck that are bringing it that last mile to you.
Right.
I think we've developed on my end that truck. We don't have to worry about last mile delivery. We just need to help load it up and find a delivery driver at every agency that can let people know that here's this resource you can go to find, be it, like what you do, which is how we met, was I called and said, hey, can I put you, across everything that we have? Is it okay if I feature CopLine across everything? I found you everywhere. We need a number that's stuck on all this stuff. can I put you guys on there? And now that I'm learning about so many people that do such great work in terms of providing content and services, from, all the neat stuff we do with 100 Club, which is the basis of the content that we now have in Lighthouse. So they researched 50, 60 topic areas that we wrote about. That's a little mini WebMD geared towards first responders. It's constantly growing. Amy Morgan, Academy Hour, certified first responder counselor, been talking to her about all these great videos. And what I think is critical is as we've chatted about is training for these therapists. How do we get out to more therapists in different areas and let them know, hey, if you do want to support this community, here's some paths you can take to improve your cultural competency and demonstrate that, you're not just trying to get the insurance check from that, from that agency's, EAP or whatever it may be, but you really want to put the time in to understand what it means to be able to sit there and work with the first responder, especially with everything that's going on today.
It's really sitting there and bearing witness to their pain. So there'd be a few things if you came into my office that you'd see besides the obnoxious amount of Wizard of Oz crap that I have. Which I think I shared, and I might not have the story of the Wizard of Oz. I'll do it very quickly. Had I told you where it started from?
No.
So my first patient was a 64-year-old man. You have to leave your career at 65. So he was mandated to see me for the year. He was the nastiest man I had ever met in my entire life. The worst case scenario anybody can ever have. So when he yelled, I just shook. And so this goes back 30 years ago. So I found out, so he was in a bedroom community, very wealthy, kind of, Mayberry type. Found out that 6 months into his career, he had been involved in a shooting. That night, he went to his friend's house. His friend poured him his first drink. Game on. Speed ahead, gets married, has a couple kids. Wife leaves him for his best friend. And he has the kids. 2 years later, the wife comes back and he fights for custody in court. This is 50 some odd years ago. No single man was getting custody of his children. Never told the kids. Drinking continued. He's just bitter. By the time he got to me, he's just angry and bitter. And so he was talking about his best friend who was in the hospital. And then I said, are you going to go see him? He said, no. I said, we're not. He said, because he can't do anything. And then I said, if he was scared, would you? And he finished my sentence. He said, I'd stand there until I dropped. And then I realized that he was the wizard, that behind the curtain was this gentle old man that would do anything. And I thought about it. What's the only thing cop wants to do at the end of the day, a first responder? Go home. Most loyal canine, Toto, never left her side. And that they don't know if they have the brains, the heart, or the courage to do what's going to be asked of them. And then somehow or another, my job was to end up as Glinda. My job's to watch over them. So hence why the Wizard of Oz was born, and I've told the story, that the obnoxious amount of crap in my office has just continued to be added to because it truly ruminates. So that would be one of the things. And the other thing are the Limoges monkeys, is they hear no evil, speak no evil, and see no evil. And it is my reminder that I am paid to bear witness to pain, that I am not paid to be one of those monkeys, because it is so much easier emotionally to side with a perpetrator than it is to bear witness to a victim. And, if tasked in training clinicians, the understanding of those two components is key. And when I have been asked to train therapists or talk to people that think this is a great field to get into, and by the way, amazing field to get into, but here's what I gave up. I gave up my hours. I gave up any 9 to 5 fantasies. I gave up my holidays. I gave up raising children in a quote unquote normal fashion. We have done field day. There has always been a cop with me at field day because that's the time that we had to run over there and watch the, turtle race going on. It's really kind of this marriage that you end up with to a population that is underserved, it is overneeded, and they ask so little of us. And so really truly owning that and understanding that in your heart, it truly isn't for everyone. My kids are different because of it. I know that when I shut my door at night that I'm not safe. Other people in my lovely neighborhood think that they are. So, that hypervigilance, that paranoia based in reality that an officer has, it certainly is one that I could not protect myself from. And when the guys come in and they've been involved in a shooting, and I'm very relaxed for shootings, and I think to myself, well, this is your first shooting. This is probably my 100th and 70th shooting, so I'm okay with the shooting. But really kind of understanding a very different world and really not judging for it. They don't particularly like passive people. They are not looking for a kumbaya session where you just kind of wave a wand and everything goes away. That's not their reality. It is a really interesting and incredibly rewarding group if you can understand them. So that training, that cultural competency that you talk about, the heart and soul that you possess, and you talked about working for a not-for-profit, that there is something inside of you that clearly connected on a very different level, because you're giving back to them, and the genuineness that you do it with can be smelt from miles away. You can see it in your face,
That's too kind.
in your body language, that there's something, and that's what will connect you to this population, and truly wanting to be part of the solution and not the problem. But to truly understand, like you keep mentioning, confidential, that is the most important piece of any wellness app, is who's going to know I'm using it. Who's going to know that if I end up calling a therapist, is my chief going to know? Is my HR department going to know? Like, who is going to know? And I know when CopLine came out, that was we've discussed it. We became a non-rescue line. We were not willing to, for the good of the one, we were never going to outweigh the good of the many. That if we pinged phones and we traced calls, we know who shows up at the door.
Yeah.
And, and that's not, people that typically call hotlines don't die by suicide. They are reaching out. And, the retired officers that are answering are all trained incredibly well. And you've got to trust in that to take care of those that are reaching out. So I want you to kind of spend time on that whole confidentiality piece for not only the audience who, is varies, but for me as well, because I really want to gain as much insight as I can.
Yeah, for sure. So the first part is, I'm going to get to the apps second, because I know some people just aren't going to trust apps. I'm not going to put something on my phone. While we do everything we possibly can to make sure that that is confidential, if no matter what we say or try and do and show, they're not going to believe that. Why we think having the website is so important, that someone can go to any computer, anywhere, type in a code for their agency and get access to this library of information, right? So you can go to the library, you can go to a Starbucks, wherever you want, and be able to log into this. We're never going to know where you came from. We've built everything that runs on our site. So I'm going to get into the technical nonsense, but we don't run Google Analytics. There's no Facebook code. There's nothing running behind the scene. There's no third party that's tracking what's happening once you log in to our website. Our server itself purges itself every 48 hours, I think. So we don't keep logs of even IP addresses or where people came from. All of our URLs. So, if you type out the whole thing across the board, it doesn't say /I drink too much, help me .whatever. It's just a giant, gobbledygook URL. So even if you were sitting at your computer in the car and you went to Lighthouse, no one in your agency's IT would be able to look at those logs, those traffic logs, and be able to see what you saw there. And we're constantly trying to come up with better ways, other things we can do to ensure that. The other big part is we don't run your agents. We're not part of any agency. And I've had that kind of hang up with a couple of folks. Brian Fleming up north, Brian,
I know Brian.
At, rolling out to folks. He's like, man, no one's going to trust this if it says, my city dot whatever app. And I'm like, Brian, you got to get through. We're only says that because so they know we have their information in it. It's not their app. We're giving it to the agency. It's got zero to do. Now, if the agency wants to financially contribute at a small amount, that's fine and dandy. We're not going to say no, but they've got nothing to do with how this thing is run, nor do they have any access to it. So, we know that's kind of a hurdle we need to get over with some folks as well.
And Brian would have said that with a wicked Bostonian accent.
Yep, he does. He's fun. But we know, I think to a couple of other points that you mentioned was it's going to take time for us to build trust. So I launched this a year ago, probably. I called you and said, hey, we're about to do this. Here's where things are going. I ran around for a few months and how do we get anybody involved? So it took us a year and we've got 30, 40 agencies now. So now I can give at least referrals within the community saying, hey, call LA County Sheriff, call Portland Police Department, call Chattanooga PD. I've got a list of these that will say, hey, this guy's not full of it. He said he's going to give it to us at no cost. He did. Here's how we're running it. Yeah. So we built that trust. But we know even within the agency, it's going to take 2 to 3 years before people trust it. You got to get somebody to say, first few years, I'm not putting that thing on my phone. Mm-hmm. Second year, somebody did and tells the guy that didn't want to put it on his phone, hey man, I've been using it. Look, it's got all this other stuff that's not, it's got yoga classes or whatever we're going to put in there. It's not all like, oh shit, we're screwed that everybody's going to be tracking. It's just general health and wellness stuff that's great to have. So the financial aspect too, that I'll throw in is that programs have to, everything I sell to public safety, it comes down to, it's got to not only be financially sustainable because budgets come and go. If it's a giant dollar amount, you're not going to be sure if that's going to be able to be there again next year. And I think for any health and wellness programming, it's critical that you can depend on it, not only this year, but next year and probably the year after, to build that trust within an agency. If you're going to truly roll out a program that's going to have lasting impact, it's got to be something that's not contingent upon finding a ton of money, regardless of where it is, again, the year after and the year after. Absolutely. And two, it also just has to be damn easy to use. And everything I sell to I'm the app guy, right? So I sell apps to public safety. I don't exist in 95% of the cases. I just showed up with something the agency has never done before. My line is, I know whoever I'm talking to already has 100 jobs, only got time to get to 50 of them as it is. Hey, Joe just showed up with 101. So we've got to make sure it's as easy to use as we can make it, that we're as proactive in helping agencies use it. Hopefully it's as good, you can launch it and it's going to give you benefits, but we know to get the most out of it, we've got to get some participation back from the agency. So we need to make it easy to use and be as just open as possible to being able to help them along the way with it. So all those components, it's kind of a lot. I call it's like the slot machine of public safety or, public safety acquisition. You've got to have budget. Number one, you've got to have command. Somebody's got to have decision-making power to say, yes, we want to go do it. But then you've got to have somebody down the chain that has the time to use it. And if you don't hit all three of those, it's not going to be a successful program. So, we're very cognizant in everything that we do, that we need to do as much as we can to make sure those three can align.
So what has been your feedback on confidentiality, on the app, on the resistance to getting treatment? Kind of what do you hear on your end?
Well, we're still in the first phase of our rollout. So we launched this, I think, in February of last year. Okay. Some stuff, publicly opened it all up. Some stuff has happened along the way in the last, 12 or so months since then. So our first giant batch is actually going to roll out. So do we have all the feedback yet of what are they saying once it's out there? We know the folks that are rolling the program out are excited about it, but we haven't had a chance really to get a lot of good feedback from the line level folks, to be honest, yet. And that's a huge part of it, as we chatted a little bit before, is I didn't mention, we also work with the National Center for Prevention of Community Violence, Bobby Kipper, who started that up, and they got a grant from the Motorola Foundation, which allowed us to go out and do our first 15 agencies. And with our first 15 agencies that we went out and did this with, a couple of things were, one, we wanted to make sure that we got a good representation. So we've got giant agencies, like top 5 in the US size to sub 15 employee sized agencies, because we wanted to see the difference in how do you roll this out? What's the different programming? And then, 6 months, 12 months in, part of this is getting the feedback that you were just asking, not only from the administrators, but as much as we can from the folks within the agency to how is this, are you using it? What can we do? What can we do better? So I anticipate by mid-year, we're going to have that first solid round of feedback back in for it. But also the great thing was we thought based on our technology, these would be easy to roll out. It ended up being even easier. So when we went and first launched this, we were thinking it was going to cost a couple $1,000s per agency to roll these out. It honestly only takes us a few hours of time per agency to be able to do these from our end. Now, hopefully they'll want to spend a lot more time, but we really don't need to make this like a mission to the moon to get these things out there. So that allowed us to move. Originally, when we launched it, agencies would have to pay for the custom application. It ends up being a few hours of my staff's time. We just contribute that. We can at least get them launched if they want to do more and do other things. So it was neat. I mean, back December, we finally said, nope, there's going to be no cost to it. So that I do like, though, that an agency contributes. We have some very low, like couple $100 a year plans, because if they at least get a budget, a line item, that means they're going to get that command buy-in. Someone's going to look at this and say, hey, we're paying money for this. Is anybody doing anything with it? So we do like to try and see if we can get it. But kind of the last thing I want to do is put a paywall up between first responder wellness. It just shouldn't exist. Sure. And if it's at the end of the day, it's a couple $100s, well, we'll figure out how to cover that for any agency that wants to do it, to at least, nothing else, put that button in their hands. I call it the oh shit button. I need help now. And then hopefully give them something that their agency can constantly push out, just little notices to drive them to other info, but just that they know that, I know I saw a 24/7 help. They might not pay attention to it, 51 weeks out of the year, but that 1 week that something went really wonky, they've at least seen it enough times to know that there might be a resource that they can go do. And it really shouldn't cost us a lot of money to do that, regardless of agency size, the ability for them to push that out. So
how many people do you have on staff, Joe, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So the company wide, we're about 20 full-time folks. The vast majority are developers. So I've to date been, there's 3 of us that are kind of front talking to agencies for the most part. Honestly, I told you I'm losing count of how many we're bringing on, but we're somewhere about 150 to 175 apps that we've launched. I've talked to everybody that's come on board, and I intend to do that for as long as possible. Because one of the other things I also hate, having sold technology and bought technology, is a lot of times people are sold by somebody who doesn't really know what they're selling. So we do our best to I shouldn't say who doesn't know what they're selling, but who's selling you what they think you want to buy, and who's not really answering the questions of what can and can't it do. So as long as I can hold on to it, I like being the front end and working so they know what they're getting and what it can and can't do. But
I think the other part of that is that after you sell it to them, that you don't disappear. That it's like, well, now you have all those firewalls to this guy named Joe that sold this to us.
Yep. So we do. So after it goes, we do have a full-time, who I brought on last year, is our full-time, we call our customer success manager, who then handholds them from the moment they're on board, going through the launch process, and then grows the relationship with them and understands their agency as they go forward. So when we do that quarterly check-in, we're not, recreating the wheel. Hey, we know you were trying to achieve X, Y, and Z. As we grow, that's the position we need to continue to add to, because that's not an unlimited resource that you can have on the phone, with people. That's a person that's got to be able to, connect the dots here and there. Yeah. You got to have somebody with a little bit of mental acuity to them. So as we continue to grow, that's the position that we'll continue to fill in for folks, but we should be good for a little while.
So for somebody who has problems sending Zoom requests every week, so I have a team that does that. So kind of lay out for me, like I tease everybody that how car companies have crash dummies. If you ever want to know how well your app works, send it to me, because if I can figure out how to work it truly, you've got a great product. It is kind of lay it out. So you guys do the designing and the software. So I know there's like 2 different pieces of that. So if you kind of want to.
Yeah. So it starts off with, you get an app that's pick an agency, let's say, LA County Sheriff versus Stallion Springs, 12 people, 20,000 versus 12. Day one, they're both going to get the same application. And we hand them something that's customized. They have a little page they can add specific relevant info to them. That's all they need to do. Now, is it going to be as effective if that's all they ever do? I don't think it is, but it's going to work. It's going to give them the help now button and a library of our resources that they're able to get into. We call everything we do fully managed self-service, meaning we give you the keys to get as deep into this thing as you want to get into it as we possibly can. We've got agencies that go crazy with it. I open their apps and I've got no clue what they're doing with it. I know it's our system, but I don't know how they put all the pieces together. And we've got agencies that email us everything that they want to do. So anywhere in between, we'll work with agencies on that scale. And I'd say probably maybe 15% are on the go crazy side.
All right.
I'd say probably, of the balance, maybe 20% are on they never want to touch it again. They launch it and they just email us. And everybody else is more on the in-between, that side. But we're, having sold to public safety and deployed applications specifically to public safety for 6 years, plus or minus now, I think one of the reasons we do well, and I take myself I'm very prideful on the fact that if you call many of our customers, they talk about what our customer service is. Like we're not used to people actually responding to phone calls or responding immediately when we have requests. Even if we can't answer the question, we try and get back to you. So as we grow, that's one of the things we really want to make sure we stay in focus on, because that's what makes it successful in the long run anyway. But you don't have to be tech savvy. So to answer the question is, we put a button in your phone that lets you send those notifications out, and we'll log you in and do everything. So as if you can send a Zoom request, you can probably be able to manage and send messages out to your entire agency from our platform. You don't need to be any more complicated than sending an email out.
So for agencies that have no EAPs, they have no services. Yes, you've got a hotline for 24/7 for police. What do you put in there, and how do we enrich it for those locations?
Yep. So the two chunks are, we're constantly adding. So we've got this library, think of it as a mini WebMD that's 50 something topic areas specifically already written towards first responder wellness. So everything from mindfulness to resiliency to surveys that they can take, for stress or alcohol abuse or anything, all of that's in there already. We're constantly adding to that. So with our various partners that we've now brought on, we probably add, let's say 3 or 4 pages per month to that section. That's what I'm learning, to be honest, now too, is who are the other folks out here in this world, and what can we pull out in there that, as I said, that's the no cost resources that we can continue to add. And I'd like to say that, in most cases, I'm popping into agencies that have well thought out programs. Yeah, not so much. We're out of our first 15, 20, I would say probably 30% of them, we are their wellness program already. Cool. We know we need to do this. So we've got a monthly newsletter that goes out to all those folks that we work with that says, here's the new things that we've added. Here are other resources and other things that we want you to be aware of.
And they're just automatically put into the program that everybody has.
Yep. And we're gonna continue to grow that kind of automated part for it, where they don't have to do anything. Now, again, we want them to, but we know in a lot of cases they just can't. They don't have it yet to be able to put their own information in, or two, even if they do, they don't have time. As I said, I fall to we gave them job 101. I'm just not going to be able to get to my Monday to sit there and go send this push notification that I know I'm supposed to send out. So those are the types of things that we want to look at and do. And then just as we add on, so a big part of where we want to grow is partnering, like Arizona. So if we work with the 100 Club of Arizona, they know what needs to happen in Arizona. So we can use our product as the tool for them to deliver the resources down into their community. Illinois, Chicago is now they're evolving into their 100 Club of Chicago. They're going to evolving into the 100 Club of Illinois. So similar thing there, like talking with Brian with Massachusetts. Okay, MassCop, right? So they work with X amount of different agencies. Well, how do we go in and take all the work that Brian and MassCop are doing, in that unit, and be able to push that to their local agencies? So key to this is finding folks that are on the, the state or lower level that we can teach on what our platform does and work with them to be able to populate it with resources that are relevant, to their folks. And we continue to run, like FOP is doing such amazing stuff that they're going to start, as they're going to be start rolling out. Well, we can deliver all that, Survive First in Florida, Doug Monda, who's been awesome in helping me get the word out with what we're doing. He's just like, we can help people pay for this stuff. Nobody knows I exist, but I'm out here and we're trying to go help people, so let's do a feature on them. My target person is the peer support coordinator at an agency. I'm never going to know what to give to the individual folks, but we can certainly load that peer support coordinator up with tools and access to resources to help them find the things they need for their particular agency.
So I'm going to go into a different area. So a lot of the agencies that I work with here, the ones that I have dealt with in Oklahoma, do not have peer support. So it's also, one of the things, as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, uncomfortable ambulance chasing thoughts of when you look at who died by suicide, what agency, what location, what was in place, what wasn't in place, kind of doing a forensic autopsy post to be able to see. And, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of enriched departments that you still have officers that die by suicide. But demographically, it would be interesting to see, because I do find, unfortunately, most change takes place after an
event.
Mm-hmm. Is to then be able to approach them. And again, this is difficult because there's a lot of ambulance chasing pieces, but if you're not looking for money and you're able to say, this is a devastating event, and I would like to be able to put something in every one of your officers' hands that just possibly might be another anchor to this world, would you allow me to show it to you? And when you go into the smaller departments in Oklahoma or, outskirts places, your Los Angeles Sheriff's Department will do you far more harm than good. Chattanooga will be your inroad because the understanding of the little guy is so important. And Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, LAPD, San Diego, there's such lovely, amazing, enriched programs that I can imagine that when it comes in and you have your wellness app and you get to, put in all the clinicians, you're like, wham, it's just, it's incredible. As I know, compared to my guy in New Jersey, I just sent him the list and told him to remove me so that we don't have that.
Yeah. And that's, I said, our big part for us was bringing on agencies of all sizes.
Mm-hmm.
And, the needs of the 16,000 agencies. I think the average size is 65 employees, somewhere around there. Right. And we've got the anchors that are way out on the, the LAs, the San Diegos, the New Yorks, the Chicagos, that are these behemoth organizations. But pretty much everybody else is down on the other end of that scale for the most part. And they're not going to have the resources,
right,
to have a full team, to have, so you're going to be looking at how do you do regional or statewide, depending on this. I come from California. We got a whole mess of stuff going on compared to South Dakota, just by nature of the populations of what we have and the resources that now, whether they're being spent where you want them to, who knows, but
right,
it's a very different thing. And that's what's kind of fun about what we've built. I think what we've built is as we learn, and again, that's where it's critical for me. I don't want to have to show people. I'd rather just have people hear that, hey, I heard about, and that's how, I told you we got, I think 8 or 9 agencies in the last week that reached out. And it was just showing a presentation to somebody, somebody believed, hey, this guy's not full of it. I'm going to go refer him to the next, somebody else. And that's how we're going to grow. And then finding those organizations that are on the ground and being able to just make the work that you do more accessible, make the work that Survive First does more accessible, be that channel and conduit to take the programming is there, which is, as you sit there and sit back and look at this, there's really not a lack of resources. It's a lack of letting people know where to go to find the resources,
Absolutely.
and then let's put a whole nother level that we can trust on top of that, which is even, probably just as important. But there's not a lack in getting somebody help that needs help. That's the furthest from the truth. Once you actually kind of lift the hood on this whole, first responder health and wellness world, is the resources are out there. So just where do we find them and how do we connect people with them more efficiently?
Your humility is refreshing, unusual, and an incredible asset. You are very bright. You're very focused. You know what's needed. And when you come across, your sincerity is unchallengeable.
Well, that's kind of you. So hopefully I'm going to get done with this stuff and other people can talk about this, because I hate doing these things. You're the only one of these things I've done so far. So
but nice I think it's important, because the other part, Joe, is when you see you and you talk to you, it's different than when you see somebody else and you talk to somebody else. And whether it be another company or what have you, the other thing is that this is your baby. And yes, you birth it, and at some point in time it gets to, crawl and walk and goes out on its own. But that pride and ownership, that pride in what you've done, the need to deliver the product that you set out to deliver is in every ounce of your body. And that's what comes across. And cops smell bullshit from a mile away. And when they feel like they're being sold something, they don't want it. But when they get that somebody actually gave a shit and that they didn't go to the bottom of a barrel and gave them leftovers, they are the most appreciative population and well-deserving. And being able to do this with you has been really rewarding for me, because as we said, we hadn't met, and you had called me out of the blue, and I am probably more surprised than anybody in the entire world when somebody calls me up and wants to use something for CopLine, because I carried that child for 4 times a normal elephant's pregnancy before it was ever birthed, and well worth the stretch marks I ended up with. But it was just neat. And when you were talking, I wanted to say to you, was I pleasant when I spoke to you? Because there are many times where I think to myself, oof, that just wasn't kind the way I came across. Because so often I get people that are just so full of shit that either want to peck you to death, they want something, and it's for a gain. And I remember, because there's one of my board members that told me that I should get in touch with you or what have you, and that you were trying to get in touch with me, and when I connected, and I thought, it doesn't seem full of shit. Like, what am I missing? Like, is my shit monitor like off today? And then kind of over time, we spoke, just different times. And anytime I've needed something, just you've always been so available and just so humble. And so we'll figure it out, whatever we need, whatever officers need. And in that, you get to grow and accomplish everything that you want to. And I think you have a young child, if I'm not mistaken. Yes?
Nope.
You don't have kids?
Nope. It's just me.
A son. Because your legacy is just going to be amazing.
Well, and I mean, and I thank you. That's way, way too kind for you to say. But to a couple of points, what people is, how do I do this? And it's that I don't have kids. I've built a pretty successful company that I'm happy. I won't get into it, but I worked for somebody used to own a baseball team in the 80s. So when billions was real money, not the fake billions we have now, so I've seen people at the highest level of having every dollar they could ever want. And I don't know if that was what did it, but money, it can get you so far. So I'm lucky and blessed enough to have, it wasn't easy. Thank you for saying I'm 44. It took me a while to get here, but I'm finally, recently at a point where, I don't think I'm going to have to worry about making money to enjoy life to the level I want to live at. And it's not crazy by any means, but how can I continue to do this is I think the poor folks at the 100 Club heard me melt down when I realized what this could be. I said, hey, wait, we've built this thing that can really have an impact. And I kind of just say at the end of the day, okay, I've got myself to a point where I just need to not F it up. It's there. Don't overextend it. Do what you say you can do with it. I'm not going to sell it. So a lot of things happen, in any technology that you see as somebody grows a big company and they pull the ripcord because someone offered them a good check.
Right.
I don't need that anymore. I have no intent to let go of this. I think the rest of my business, the Apex side, is going to continue to grow and do well. And I love building stuff that helps our public safety do their jobs better and faster. That's just neat to be able to contribute, just broader society. But being able to take that and think that we can actually have an impact, when I realized what this could do, you've had these realizations, you guys are there, and I'm sure it's what most first responders do, not that I'm even coming close to comparing, but being able to feel that you're getting up and giving back, and it's going to impact something that's more than just a bank account at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
When this kind of clicked in my head on what it can be, and I haven't got into where we want to take this thing because I'm another firm believer of don't sell what you don't have, so here's what we have today, but the road that we want to take this down, and I think we will as we continue to get more folks on board, is something that's going to be in fact impactful beyond me. And once you kind of realize you're doing something that's going to do that, that's a pretty humbling experience. And, I literally poor Angela and Iva both got me one day going, oh, what the hell am I doing? Like, I'm, whoa. And, it's exciting to still do and now be able to see it actually in fruition. It's been a year of getting it there. And, the challenges we faced are nothing compared to the challenges that, the folks that are out there on the streets every day are facing. Day to day, something else changes with what that challenge is. It's the roulette wheel of how shitty can today be almost, when you look at stuff. But now that we've got this little bit behind us and, again, I've got my street cred enough that I can start referring people to other agencies that aren't just me saying, I think this is cool. I think we're on path to be something really great and amazing, and just to support, the stuff that you do. That was the first thing was that, I just call it the oh shit button. Like everything needs an oh shit button. Can we make you the oh shit button? And, there's so many of those folks that are out there. Every day I get introduced to somebody else who's trying to do amazing things for our first responders. And, it's overwhelming. I can imagine being somebody who's sitting as all right, Sergeant Joe, you're our new peer support guy, go,
Yeah.
but you're still, sitting at the, you're the watch commander too for your own whatever. And you're supposed to build a peer support program. And now you're getting hit from every side by, here's this program, here's that program. Oh, you need to go here, you need to go there. So being able to help funnel that down for that person and give them something that's meaningful and impactful that they can then go do the job that they've been given out to do. It's just really neat, so we're excited to see where it's going to go. And finding like-minded folks, same thing. I've talked to a lot of people. There's a lot of people that I talk to that I go, yeah,
not so much.
yeah. Like, cool. Do you have, go sell you what you're going to do, pitch your wares. But, you can tell the ones that you think are in it for what I call the right reasons. And It's just a weird spot. Like, I just can't think of anything where profit shouldn't matter for anybody when it comes to the health and wellness of our first responders. Like there's no positive benefit that any of us get by shortchanging the health and wellness of the folks whose literal job it is to be there, when I need help. Yep. Or when someone called you to come deal with my dumb ass because I'm being stupid. Regardless of what's happening that day, I want that person to be having, as a selfish person, to be having the best possible day that they can have. That just makes sense. So how anybody can't get behind this, I've never heard of anybody that doesn't get behind it. But, the fact that those resources aren't there even more is mind-boggling when you really start thinking about it. But
you've broken down one of the biggest barriers, which is the finances. that for departments to have access to this, and obviously on greater levels, there is a buy-in, but that's always been, the first hurdle is how much is it? And, they're screaming about defunding the police, and, we now have to worry about budgets. I know LAPD is now looking at furloughs. It's just, you've got all this, and to be able to say, I can remove those hurdles.
And you can have a program in place that can move with you when you have it. Hey, cool. Grants magically showed up again. Well, here's a path where it can go to do this, but we actually know the cost,
right.
And we're not just shoveling money out the door because it's a grant that came. So cool. I got a grant. Let's go spend it. Well, can we spend that smarter?
Right.
Can we do things? And I think that's one of the things I'm excited to do as we continue to grow this is how do we use this to put together programs in place that actually save agencies money? What is it that your health insurance company will look at, to say, hey, you've got certain programming pieces in place that once we can do it for one agency, we can do it for everybody.
Right.
So how do we translate that savings back into our agencies in the long run and not say, hey, I got to go to your health insurance company to pay for this. I'd rather they go to their health insurance company and say, hey, how much can I get off my premium if I do this?
Right. And we
and try and find
when the police departments had gyms and put in place that, X amount of hours a week or what have you, that they would have gym time. But we saw the offset with the healthcare, so that they did do a kickback on it. So this is another way.
And it's one of the things that, I've said to make any impact, you've got to get to scale. So I kind of look at any program that's out there and say, how can we get the most people participating in this as possible? Because then that also lets us go tap other resources, So when you're able to say, hey, I've got X tens of thousands of first responders and their family members that are looking at our message every week. There's a lot of other pockets that make a lot of money off selling stuff to first responders, to police departments and fire departments. And
yes.
I won't pick on anything in particular, but
right.
They are not small budgets to equip these organizations.
Right.
There's a lot of folks that make money to be able to say, hey, you need to come in and support this. So as we continue to grow, I think that's going to be another great way for me to go personally and be the little bit of leverage saying, hey, no, XYZ, open the checkbook up here, as opposed to a marketing dollar. Why don't you do this? And here's some impactful programming you can do and put your name behind. It's not a commercial, more the PBS, old school days of, this program was brought to you by, and you got a couple logos that popped up,
yep.
And just to support those types of causes. So having the price point be where people can get on board, I'm not going to lie, a big part of it is we can get more agencies participating, which means we can go pick more pockets to support this cause, because those big companies, they see something that they can justify, through their chain to say, hey, it's not just good and we hope they all do give to good, but if they can put some numbers behind that, that can really, I think, open up some resources that have to date been untapped for this. And hopefully we can start cracking on those doors pretty soon too.
Wonderful. Is there something that I didn't ask you that you wanted me to ask you or cover?
I don't think so. I think we got it all. I just appreciate the time to be here. And again, any agency, it sounds crazy, but just if you Lighthouse, the website, lighthousehw.org, there's a contact site. I'll email you all the information. We pretty much have agencies right now set up within 2 to 3 days. So this does not need to take forever to get a program out there. For most agencies, we actually put we say, hey, are you really seriously considering this? Okay. We'll actually put the app in their hands to play with. Again, it's free anyway, so I don't know what they're really committing to, but before they even commit to free, we do that. I said there are a couple of other steps. And so I think that part I didn't mention is Lighthouse is a public benefit corporation. So at the end of the day, our shareholder is public safety. So any profit that Lighthouse makes goes back into supporting first responder health and wellness programmings and initiatives. I was lucky enough, a few organizations I was able to make donations to from Lighthouse last year. We didn't make a lot of money, but it doesn't have to go anywhere. It costs us nothing. So the money that comes in, even for the steps that we might have, and I think the most we would ever charge an agency as of today is $3,500 and then $3 per employee per year. Probably 90% of those dollars go back into directly to programming or hiring somebody to be on the phone with that specific agency or sending training out to that agency. So any profit that this organization makes goes back into first responder health and wellness. And that's to the point of what the legacy is it's going to take me time to build it and to find the folks that I want to shepherd this beyond me, but is building it and putting the structure in place that, you know, when I'm done or I'm long and gone, that this is able to still sit there and be this organization that supports first responder health and wellness. But like you, this is my baby. And I'm not just, you know, I don't have, one of the first things you ask me is who's on my board. And I'm like, nobody. It's my money. I don't have anybody on it yet, but I'm talking to a lot of people like yourself and others and getting counsel and guidance. We will eventually build it out and put a more formal structure behind it. But it's going to be something that lasts for a long time. So even though there are, and literally, I mean, I say from free to there are, any agency that wants to put an app in their responders' hands, there will never be a charge to do that. The only thing might be if you need us to help you more than, you know, I can only, to our point, I can only answer and my team can only answer so many calls. Eventually, we're going to need to get more help as we do that. You know, there's 30-something thousand police and fire departments in the United States. You know, eventually we're going to need more than my 20 people to handle that, but for now we're okay. But anything that we get goes back into it. So, so we're excited to see where we can do with that.
So at the end of the day, when you go to close your eyes many, many years from now for the last time, what do you want to be remembered for?
Oh, I don't care if I'm remembered at all. I just like to see that this still goes. I don't like talking about, I do. And that's what a weird thing for me was, well, to get this off the ground, I've got to put my story behind it because it doesn't make sense without my story. But to me, it'd be awesome if it didn't require that anymore. You know, just some guy that did it at one point and it's still going. Cause I like talking about what I do. I mean, you know, once I get into it, I like it, but it's not about me. I just like it because it's fun. You know, it's fun talking to people really and seeing that you're making an impact. That's neat. Yeah. But you know, the sooner that I don't have to be the one explaining what this is, the better. So for me, it'd just be neat to have it go and, you know, keep going. I think that be able to build something you think could leave a legacy, whether people know who it is or not, but that still exists is pretty neat. And that's what I want this to be for myself. And it's a really cool thing to support in general, regardless, you know, that I think truly does do a lot of good. You know, it's a good multiplier, you know, like you keep one first responder from self-harm or from having a bad day, you know, those are the butterfly effect kind of things that happen, you know, right. And doing the stuff that we do, you know, and you've been doing, you know, so much more deeply than I'll probably ever feel I can get to be doing, but that's a lot of butterfly wings that you're able to, you know, influence, hopefully in a good way. And that's just kind of neat to sit back and look at the end of the day. So
thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for picking first responders. Thank you for your humility, your dedication, your genuineness. I truly, truly appreciate it. And, you know, whatever I can do for you personally, and whatever, you know, any agency that we can get you in contact with, just know that we just start connecting dots, because you're so right that just the more hands we can get into this and the more apps we can get into first responders' hands, the more lives that you'll be able to impact and their families. So.
Well, thank you for everything that you've done, for inviting me to be on, and for the support you've given me, you know, from the first phone call of just, hey, I've got this weird idea. Is it cool? And putting me through my paces and making sure I answered the questions appropriately to begin with. And to all your folks who pay attention to this, you know, that we do this for those that are out there doing it every day without a choice in a lot of, you know, Absolutely. Without a lot of cases in the situations they're being put in. So, Absolutely. You know, especially in today, it's rewarding to be able to support that community, as well as just, you know, a sincere thank you from someone that gets to enjoy this awesome country that we live in. You know, born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, you know, I mean, it was America, yay. And I still believe that in my heart, that this is the greatest nation in the world that anybody can be a part of. I've been lucky enough to travel quite a bit, and I love coming home. And despite how creaky the wheels may get, we're still America. And what makes it is our faith in those that are out there that do the public good every day, you know, truly for public good and not for self-enrichment. And I think we're still that shining beacon of a country that the vast majority of people in these roles by far Absolutely. Still have that in their heart to go do. So it's even more rewarding now to be able to feel we're supporting something that those folks that are just doing and giving so much right now. So thank you for
Thank
that
you.
opportunity to share.
Thank you. There's nothing I want to add. I think that is a beautiful way to end this show. Thank you. Thank you for your time. And I look forward to seeing everybody on a Steph Therapy 911 with Stephanie Samuels next week. Until then, be safe.